Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around, we are playing as Brettonia against the Beastmen, in what I hope is a pretty fun and good matchup. I know you guys are probably sick of Brettonia. I have been trying to cut back on the knights, but they're just one hell of a drug. I absolutely love playing as Brettonia, and if I play other factions, I basically try to play them like Brettonia. So either way, without further ado, let's kind of hop right into this one. It is the Battle of the Cairns. We are playing as Beastmen, as we mentioned before. For my comp, nothing too fancy, though. I am trying to go a little cheaper on the Cav Force for once. Fae Enchantress coming in with the usual Regrowth, Earthblood, Favor of the Fae, Chalice, yada yada. She is backed by a unit of Grail Guardians, as usual. Frontline, 2 Foot Squires, 2 Men-at-Arms with Shields, as well as the Beast Slayer's Batstone, so a little more expensive than usual, definitely a slightly greater investment than what I'm used to. 2 Peasant Bows with Fire Arrows behind them to provide some additional killing power. On the flanks, we do have Knights of the Lionheart as well as Grail Knights, and on the other end, Grail Knights and Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis. So, some pretty potent, cheap cav, as well as some, of course, brutal, heavy cav with the Grail Knights. For my opponent, they are Beastmen, but coming in with a bit of an interesting build, something I'm not that used to seeing. We don't see any... Well, there's actually no Minotaurs in this build, which is pretty shocking. That's something I'm pretty used to seeing. You can see the front line here, some Ungor Spears, some... what are these guys called? Destroyers of Drakewald, some more Ungor Spears in there. Front line of Goreherd, so actually a pretty cheap front line. Black Horse Ravagers in there. And then for the Command League, it's actually Khazrak on foot, a Bray Shaman of Beasts coming in with only Flock of Doom, a Gorble, which is pretty cool, and you don't see these guys all that often anymore, but they used to be basically a staple of Beastmen strats, but they got kind of nerfed, I think, and they're just not that good of a unit anymore. I don't really see them very often, but they do have some pretty cool abilities. You can see Slaughter's Call, Foe Seeker, Deadly Onslaught, Banner of Fallen King, so definitely some cool stuff, and they are being backed here by the Koroks Manrippers. And the back, my opponent does have 2 Centaurs, one normal Great Weapons, 1 Son of Goros, and they are immediately pushing towards my backline, but I didn't immediately spot him, so you can see I'm flexing around. The Beast Slayer's Batstone here, as well as the Grail Guardians, getting chipped away at by the Flock of Doom. It's really not going to do that much damage. These guys are just too heavily armored and too tanky. But we are swinging our cav here on an intercept course. We do pull our archers forward and pulling this cav in here as well, just trying to plug up the gap in here and deny our opponent that push. Unfortunately, these Sons of Gorge do actually push around, and one of the annoying things here is that our knights were not actually doing a very good job of shutting them down. They got kind of wrapped up here on a handful of these clowns. Just like one guy over there just locks down a bunch of the knights, and because of that, these peasant bows actually are going to rout, which is pretty pitiful. These guys really didn't take that much damage, but they're peasant bows, they don't rout so easily, and the Sons of Goros actually here managing to shut them down, and not only do they shut these guys down and rout them, they're actually going to move on and be able to attack the second unit of peasant bows, but these knights are still failing to shut them down. Over here, some Centaurs do get caught out and get massacred, which is not good for them. While over here, the Ungor Spears do get piled into with the Grail Guardians. You might think this is a bad trade, but I simply need to tie these guys down to allow the rest of my knights to mop up these Centaurs. In the front line, things are going okay. You can see the Foot Squires trading really well with the Black Horned Ravagers, despite Apocalyptic Vision and all that fanciness. Favor of the Fae going down, these guys allowing them to tear through this Goreherd. One of the cool things about Foot Squires is that despite not having too many amazing stat lines, or parts of the stat line, they've got really high weapon strength for a unit of their cost. 35 plus 9 bonus versus large means that they hit like absolute trucks against infantry. Over here, slightly mistimed Chalice of Potions is going to be a bit of a pain because it means these spears get to push through. However, for my opponent, Papa Gorble here getting tangled up by Grail Knights, and they are actually going to chip him down pretty quickly. Anytime over here, we do get a charge in from the Knights of the Lionheart, who are, of course, going to do surprising amounts of work against these pitiful spears. Unfortunately, bit of a... and this is one of those things, of course, the lightly armored spears, you can always charge the spears with cav, as long as you have decent armor of your own and are quick on the draw to pull out. Unfortunately for me, though, Khazrak wanted diving in here against the Fae Enchantress, beating the snot out of her. She's definitely not where she wants to be. She's only got a little bit of support there, and this is definitely some rough stuff. On the periphery, we do manage to intercept and run down these Centaurs with Grey Weapons. I simply leave the Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis to mop them up, and then pull the Grail Knights over to get a rear charge into the back of these Ungor Spears. Unfortunately, the Fae Enchantress is getting slaughtered by Khazrak. We do get an Earthblood off, just trying to keep things intact.
With haste.
Trying to keep this pocket up and running. But she's getting knocked out by Khazrak, and we do pop Arcane Conduit. I was hoping that I was trying to force path her out of there, but she just would not force path out. Khazrak actually manages to keep up with her on foot a little bit. He's going to land another hit here pretty shortly. see she's down to 900 HP. My opponent sort of moving his spears in there to zone her off and prevent her from escaping Kazrak. And he's actually landing some brutal hits there. She's down to 200 HP, and she actually shatters. I don't actually know if she escapes or if she dies here. I think Kazrak actually might catch her and kill her. No, maybe not. I was wrong, but either way, she's shattered off the field. So I'm now down my caster, which is definitely something I'm not used to seeing as Brettonia. I almost never have that happen. Over here, we do have the Grail Guardians and the Grail Knights crushing these Ungor Spears. But the balance of power shifting decisively out of my favor. We have managed to mop up with enemy cav. Definitely that was a pretty big win for me. But the Fan Enchantress is gone. My infantry line is essentially gone. And my opponent still does have a pretty sizable force of spears. He still does have the Korok's Man Rippers, who still have 55 models left. He does have Kazrak. A bunch of Goreherd. He does still have his caster. And even the Gorbul's still around and kicking. You can see the archers, they're trying to pepper him down, but they don't have a lot of AP, so they're not going to do huge damage. Destroys your Drakewall. They're trying to plow on, but they'll get shut down hopefully pretty soon. But definitely things looking a bit grim. I do pull my knights away from these Ungor Spears, just trying to get away from them, deal with these Goreherd, pushing in the Grail Guardians to shut them down. Foot Squires here getting massacred, and actually in a bit of a surprise stand here. They're down to 12 models, and still they're holding against these Goreherd, doing a surprisingly good job of holding their own. Foot Squires don't tend to tank damage all that well. They've got pretty low melee defense, and their armor's not actually that good, but they did try. Here in the pits, though, things looking a little grim. The Knights of the Lionhearted getting routed off and getting slaughtered. And, of course, I do not have any more heals. The Grail Knights just retreating full speed. I figured I needed to pull my opponent apart. You can see the balance of power shifting pretty badly out of my favor. We do manage to mop up some of these destroyers of Drakewall, just rout them off with our Grail Knights. But definitely at this point, we're on a little bit of a timer. We're losing troops. We're losing models, and we're not able to replace them. Now, granted, one of the courageous stands here, the Beast Slayers of Bastogne, holding their own against hordes of enemy troops, and with the Grail Knights just piling past them to go for an assassination attempt here on the Gorbul. They are going to do a lot of damage on the charge with their monster charge bonus of over 100. And of course, they're always fresh. They are going to be the old vegetable ad there, always fresh. The Grail Knights do run the Gorbul over, and that is going to be a big win there. This other unit of Grail Knights also managing to pull away after stalling the Korok's Man Rippers a little bit, and now we are going to be able to start doing some work from all sides. You can see the Knights piling in, these Grail Guardians, Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis, diving in, breaking these Goreherd. The Black Orange Ravagers are holding on one leadership, so some crazy stuff, and a Flock of Doom here, getting massive value, actually, melting down so many units all at once. It's definitely some brutal stuff, but my archers are coming back online, and they do have decent range and decent damage, so we'll be able to start peppering away these squishy troops. These men-at-arms are coming back in, but I do believe, going to notice that these spearmen are coming around. We're actually going to turn around. You can see this is one of those rare fights that men-at-arms with shields can win against Ungor Spears. A unit that's even more disposable than they are, and so they're going to be able to win that one. While on the flanks, you can see the Cav actually getting torn apart by Kazrak and the Korok's Man Rippers, which is so very good at killing these sorts of troops. However, we still do have this one unit of the healthy Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis who are pulling away. You can see another drop there of the I do believe, I'm actually not entirely sure what that spell was there. Scourge, I suppose? I don't know. But regardless, you can see the infantry here does rout, and we are actually able to start. Now, at this stage, you can see the balance of power is still out of my favor. It's still in my opponent's favor by a good bit. But things are definitely starting to even out. And this is where I started having some confidence that we could pull this bout back. You can see, even though my infantry is slaughtered, the Knights of the Lionheart have essentially ceased to exist. And my 2 units of Grail Knights are in very bad shape. I did figure that at this point we might be able to just barely pull it back. You can see the Grail Guardians diving in here to back up these Beast Slayers. The Beast Slayers are actually holding their own because they are, of course, these guys are decent. This was actually one of the rare times that I was happy these guys are not actually expendable, or these units are not expendable. Because had they been expendable, when all those men-at-arms and trashy peasants routed, there's a good chance these guys would have fallen apart too. But because they did not, they're actually going to be able to hold here. And as you can see, the balance of power is going to start slowly but surely swinging in our favor. We do get a nice little pincer here, just collapsing on these Korok's Man Rippers, hitting them from all sides, which is, of course, where the power of cavalry comes into play. Even against a relatively mobile faction like the Beastmen, you can see these Bestigors just getting torn to shreds, losing something like 24 models in the space of just a few seconds, and leaving the Bray Shaman isolated. And rather than staying in there and fighting, we're simply going to leave the Beast Slayers to keep doing their holy work against Kazrak. And pull away with all of our cav, which is really just going to leave this tiny little isolated pocket. There are still some Beastmen over here. You can see the Ungor Spears just getting forced off there. But at this point, it's simply a matter of time as we do surround my opponent's remaining troops, whittle down this Brave Shaman of Beasts, who is trying his very best to stay in the fight there, but he's just not able to cut the mustard. And finally, even Kazrak is going to shatter and rout. And actually, the Knights of the Lionheart there do come back, but that was fairly irrelevant at that stage. So a game very heavily carried by Cav, and despite the loss of the Enchantress. Obviously, big micro mistakes on my part, very bad play on my part. I should have kept her with the Grail Knights, or more all the Grail Guardians. But nonetheless, a very tight game. That was the main reason I just wanted to show this one out, play this one out. The other cool thing is that Brettonian light or cheap Cav can be very potent, especially the Regiments of Renown. But honestly, even some of the normal cheap Cav, like Knights Errant, Knights of the Realm, they can do a surprisingly good job for their cost. In this situation, the biggest problem for me was that my archers got pretty handily shut down by the Centaurs, despite the fact that the Centaurs had about, I don't know, 4,000, 5,000 worth of gold in Knights on them, which is pretty sad for me and a bit depressing. But if I had a criticism for my opponent's build, it is the lack of our anti-large. My opponent's only major anti-large was the Gorbel and the Koroks Manipers, which just isn't enough against Brettonia. Really, if you're going against Brettonia, while you always have to be ready for some ant spam, be sure to invest in some AP, some anti-large. You always want it. Brettonia is famous for their cav for a reason, and their cav is darn good. And you can see these guys are raking, getting several chevrons, 2, 3, 1, definitely some solid work. And that wasn't all from slaughtering cheap cav. When they cycle charge, even Bestigors won't hold up the Brettonian cycle charging, so you need to keep that in mind. Nonetheless, good game to my opponent, Joe can die. Interesting build, and definitely kind of cool comp to see put into action. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe below. If you have any comments, any criticism, anything like that, be sure to share them, and I will respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.